angle that was just...
Can I?
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, there was the vengeance angle that was being advanced, because then the building up Hitler only to then create a war, and then the Allies wanted unconditional surrender. Unconditional surrender means that the people who control the government know that they are going to die when the war is over, and they will therefore have their people fight to the end, and that will assure the greatest number of casualties. And you had then Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, who insisted upon that. Okay, so you get that angle, and then at the same time you have the Stern gang working together with the Nazi Party because the tensions are rising in Germany prior to World War II, and that then drives the indigenous population out of Germany and with the attempt to settle in Palestine. So they always, it's just a common denominator. They're always looking for a two-fer, they call it. 2-for, meaning two actions for one price, or for one action getting two beneficial results, okay? So they call that a two-fer in English. So here's a case where you get vengeance on the people who refused your domination, requiring those who then tried to destroy the Weimar Republic and profit from imposing socialism on Germany in the election of 1932, but failed to do so, and knew that they were going to pay a price for it, and they had to leave the country, but they weren't finished yet. They were going to even the score. So that was the sweet vengeance, and then at the same time, they end up then facilitating the creation of Israel, because they have a population base that then could justify it as being a state. You know, so they always do this. Every agenda they advance has multiple benefits.
So they used the genocide on the Jews.
Yes. Who died?
They killed millions of their own.
They did not kill 6 million. The number of people who died, I've seen the numbers, the world Jewish population after the war and before the war, and the actual number is on the order of 1.8 million, 2 million.
They're rising.
Sure. What they did was Auschwitz, Treblinka, Dachau. These were concentration camps to hold the Polish intelligentsia that were resisting the German occupation of Poland, and they were the ones. My uncle was a guest of the Third Reich, okay, in Auschwitz. All right, so I know from personal family relationships that there were a lot of Polish Catholics who died there. This was about 3.2 million, something like that. There was a lot of them. So what they've simply done is they've taken credit for all of the people who died in those concentration camps.
Polish Christians.
Fucking A, yes, 3 bags full. That's right. Polish Christians died at a factor 2 to 1.
Well, I don't trust anything what they tell us in mainstream history. Not anymore.
It's all lies. 360 degrees around. The only
so they sacrifice their own people?
No, it's sweeter than this. It's sweeter because who they sacrificed their religious element. My doctoral thesis advisor was a religious Jew, and he told me enough that translating as far as knowing these people and knowing how far they dare go and confiding to someone who is not of their type. You know, he basically told me that the American Jews were corrupt, but what he meant was that the Talmudic Jews were the ones who were advancing the agenda. They're the ones in control. They're the ones who make up the upper management of all the Wall Street banking houses, the City of London also, it's the same thing.
You don't have only Jews.
No, of course not. No, you have to have Gentile front. You have Gentile front. So, yes, but yes, that's true. That's absolutely true.
People from each country in this conspiracy.
But who controls the entire agenda? Who is at the very apex of the pyramid?
Rothschilds.
What ethnic group do they come from?
They are Ashkenazi.
Their name, absolutely. Their name was Bauer. Their name is not Rothschild. Rothschild is Rothschild. Okay, German. Yeah. So
this has nothing to do with the Jews.
No. What he was Jewish.
It might be.
It might be.
Well, I think these people are the head of this conspiracy.
We don't want to go too far down this road. The thing is that you make your own decision here. The thing is that they are overrepresented in the people who nowadays in the U.S. it's getting very interesting.
But I think this conspiracy is really old.
Fewer and fewer people are being volunteering to be fronts for this agenda, and that leaves only the core group behind it, who has always controlled it, to become increasingly more visible. Okay, so when you stand back and you look at who the major players are, There, and in fact, there is always going to be a culling of the herd. That's what's going to happen. These fellow travelers, these front people, after they get in place the kind of environment that they want, the New World Order, it becomes a tyrannical government. These fellow travelers will be cast aside, and you will have really the chosen who are sitting on the top. They only use them as a vehicle because the thing is that they don't want to telegraph too much of who's behind it all, because too many people know about this. So they're very discreet.
They just dispose it.
Exactly right. They dispose it. Exactly. No, the interesting thing is that these people know it also. The fellow travelers know it also. So there are skirmishes between these people. It's not a bunch of happy campers up there. No, these people don't have great. They are useful together. They are advancing a common agenda. But at the end of the day, there are significant factions. You've got the WASP elite, the Anglo-Saxon Protestant elite, who are represented pretty heavily. You've got also the, the interesting thing is the Thousand-Year Reich in Germany was never realized in Europe. Because of the importation of the top-level Nazis after the war, it's actually being realized through the United States, but using Nazi tactics. Have you seen the American military helmets? They look like Wehrmacht helmets from World War II. It's no accident. It's no accident. They do this kind of thing continuously. They love it. They love this, give little hints, right? And if you're observing, you can pick it up. But of course, if you say this to anybody, they're sure that they'll tell you you're crazy.
Of course.
You know, of course. And this is the beauty of it, because they are playing with the heads of the people who have them figured out. And this is especially sweet because the people who are the sheep then give negative reinforcement to the people who are actually able to see through it all, for actually trying to spread and diffuse the knowledge. It's just brilliant. And then they torture the people who understand what's going on with frustration that we are doomed to be subverted by these people.
So you think they leave us the signs, so a small group of people
they can
resist, and then they kill them.
Yes, so not necessarily kill.
So they are sadistic.
Sadistic, absolutely, they're sadistic. They love doing this kind of stuff. They love rubbing your face in it. They love it. Right? That's why they put these symbols on the U.S. dollar.
So you think they could do all of the stuff without?
No. How I think this is because they created psychology. You've got Freud. You know, it was created out of nothing. Psychology. They own this science. They own psychological warfare. They're constantly being subjected to psychological warfare in American movies. Constantly. It's a constant undermining of traditional Judeo-Christian values. They are equally at war with their own religious element. And prior to the war, the population of religious element within the Jewish community was probably something on the order of 50%. And now it is 85% atheist. Why? Because the people who died disproportionately in the Warsaw ghettos were religious Jews, and they had nothing to do with the subversion of Germany and the attempt to impose, collapse the Weimar Republic and enslave the German people. It had nothing to do with
what they also say.
They purge their ranks in the process, and then they force everybody. See what happens if you don't keep up with the agenda? You get left behind, and you don't make it. I hate it when that happens. So it makes everybody, and the other thing is, they love to attack the host society because they are a group of people without a country. And the only way they can stay together as a group is if they antagonize their host population, so they can point to their children and say, see, they hate you. You got to stay within the group. Otherwise.
Another thing is, it's said that Germany in the 20s was one of the most Jewish-friendly countries.
But
and
see,
in one decade they turned this.
There's a reason for this, my friend. The reason was they wanted Palestine. What they did was, Germany had a dominant position on the battlefield in World War I. The German Jews went to England and told the English they do not have to lose the war. Because now that they have Woodrow Wilson as the President of the United States, and he's one of theirs, they can bring the United States in the war on the side of England against Germany. Germany had given them host for 400 years. They deliberately subverted Germany during the war, and they precipitated the loss on the battlefield. It wasn't a loss on the battlefield. The Germans had a prominent position on the battlefield. The Germans, as I understand it, they overthrew the Kaiser, and they wanted to stop the war, stop the killing. But what happened was they didn't have just an armistice. It was the Versailles Treaty that was signed afterward, organized by Colonel House, who was Jewish, who was the puppet master, just like George Soros is the puppet master of Barack Obama.
Mandel House.
George Mandel House.
Oh, all right. He's a bad guy.
Right. He was the guy who pulled the strings of what's his name? Yes, and I forget which book it was.
You bring America to the World War II.
Yeah, and they did it by, and as a quid pro quo, that Lord Balfour agreed that he would give the Zionists, it was the Zionists who approached Lord Balfour, Palestine, in exchange for the Americans entering the war on the side of England against Germany. Now, this did not make, when this circulated in Germany after World War I, this is what gave rise to the anti-Semitism. And this is what gave rise to the credibility invested in Adolf Hitler by the population, because then they lost the war when they really should. There was confiscatory war reparations that the German people had to pay. And then the dirty trick was they told the German people, we'll just inflate the currency and pay them back with worthless Deutschmarks. And that led to the rampant inflation that destroyed the value of the savings of the middle class, because that's what they were after. They wanted to collapse the middle class, precisely what they're doing now in the United States. It's the same thing again and again. So they lied. It wasn't an armistice. After the war, they inflicted war reparations, and by the way, Colonel Mandel House and Woodrow Wilson were accompanied by an entourage of 300 people who were disproportionately Jewish.
Well, the thing is,
so you see that they had an agenda. They wanted Palestine at that point. They got it, and also then they wanted Germany because they had the Soviet Union, but it was an agrarian society, and they couldn't produce an economy that would sustain a large population of elite at the level where they wanted. So they wanted Germany for that reason.
The sad thing is, they take Germany and say, "Whoa, this was the Nazis. This was their most evil decade in history,"
yes, of course.
And they just blame them. And today, even after 70 years, they say, "Oh, the Germans were racist." But if you see the videos taken from the time when they did blame the Jews, like they sprayed their shops and made paintings on the shops, Jews and these things, it's always the same pictures they show us. It's always the same picture. So we think all Germans were racist.
You know why?
No. It wasn't true.
No, and the thing is that what angers them so much is that the Germans, the Nazis, used their tactics against them. They used their tactics. It was the chosen people, the master race. Okay, the Jews were God's chosen people, and the Nazis were the master race. The difference was that there were many more Germans than there were Jews, and they lost for that reason. And the fact that they had their own tactics used against them, and they lost because of numerical inferiority, angers them to this day. They hate the Germans to this day for that. Look, this could go on forever, but this is just one guy's take on it, okay? I've been looking at this stuff for quite a while and trying to piece it together like a blind man feeling an elephant, okay?
But one thing is important, the Vatican. How do you think, do they play in this conspiracy?
This is something, I'm Roman Catholic, so I suppose because of that I haven't chosen to look that deeply in that area. Look, I know the Jesuits are there's a lot of nasty stuff in there, but I honestly don't know enough to give you an I don't know. I think there are other more frightening conspiracies that are closer to fruition and with more dire consequences than worrying about the Roman Catholic Church. I don't think that's really.
Okay. Thank you.
And everything is also linked because he has so much power.
I think these people could play a role too, because I'm a Syrian Orthodox. And our church was big in the past, but it has been destroyed by the Western churches and by the Muslims, so from both sides.
Well.